It's 12 o'clock in Frisco, Texas, and it's time for Smoker Broker Radio with Robert Mesh, a.k.a. the Smoker Broker. Robert is the owner of Small World Realty and has employed hundreds of real estate agents in his 17-year career. He has instructed and mentored over 10,000 real estate agents at the highly acclaimed Champions School of Real Estate and is considered an expert in Texas residential realty. Robert is also an advocate of true entrepreneurial spirit and has helped many to transition from corporate America into the world of self-employment. And now live from the studio to your world, the Smoker Broker.
Hey, welcome to Smoker Broker. I'm Robert Mesh, and I am the guy they call Smoker Broker. Happy holidays to everybody out there. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving. Hope you're getting ready for Christmas. Getting ready to get rid of this year, this horrible year. I mean, horrible from a mental and health standpoint. We're having a harder time on the prosperity with real estate, so it's kind of tongue-in-cheek there, but happy holidays nonetheless. I hope everything's going great for everyone. I think there's a somewhat vibe of positivity that the vaccines are very close to being distributed. In fact, I heard today that I think the United Kingdom is already, they're set to start their first distributions at the middle of this month. And that is really, really good news. I'll tell you something else I liked. And this is just a personal opinion, but I loved seeing some of the world leaders saying that they're going to show that they're getting the vaccine publicly. Now, we could argue whether they're really getting the vaccine or not, but it's comforting to know that they know that that's what needs to happen, that they need to show that if they can do it, it's safe. And again, I'm not making an argument whether it's safe or not. To be quite honest, I'm still on the fence as to whether if I was given it, I would take it immediately. I think I'm going to, but I'm not so sure. My dad was funnier. I was talking to him about it, and he was like, I might want to see how the first round goes. He was being a little conservative there to see if there's any massive problems with it. So that's good news, though. I'm going to tell you right now, that's good. There are two things this week that I heard that made me feel very good. And then I'm going to tell you something that made me feel very bad about what's going on. One, that the vaccine is out there and that it looks like it's going to be probable. I also heard, and I thought this was more positive than anything, that they actually think the experts in the infectious diseases believe that there is a possibility that they're so confident that this works that there is a chance that even mass gatherings can start occurring by mid to end of next year. And if they believe that, that's a really good sign, because that means that they know it works and they know it can curtail the majority of the problems we're having. So that is just great, great news. Now I'm going to follow with bad news just on the personal side, as far as, talking about this particular topic for the last 7 months or 8 months, really, since March or whatever. And, we've constantly talked about how, there's relatively few people that we know that have had it. We have all heard that someone's had it. We've all had someone that's close to us that has known someone that's passed away and been affected by it terribly. But as far as just generically being around us, most of us, at least most of the people I've been around, have said, look, I don't know a lot of people that have it. That's different this past week. I have to admit, for the first time, there were several people that I knew that were like, I'll never catch that. And they got it, which means it's out there. It's out there and it's rampant. And I guess in defense of the concern about being scared about COVID, every one of them, it's always been, look, it's just a really bad headache and just a terrible cold feeling for the most part, for those people, not for everyone, but for the most part. And it just shows that it's not away from us yet. We're talking again about shutdowns, which I talked about it last year. I'm going to talk about it again. I'm I'm personally against it. I don't think that's the right way to do this. But again, my opinion means nothing in the end of the world with everything. But it does affect how we're conducting everything that we're doing. And right now, we're on such a shutdown economically where we just got to where people are starting to get back, trying to get things in line. And now we have this. Now we have another hesitation. I heard that in the Dallas Fort Worth area, not Dallas Fort Worth, well, yeah, Dallas Fort Worth, and the state of Texas, we're going back to region cut downs where we have to be at X%. The bars, I think, and restaurants are going back to occupancies at 50% or below. I was just really surprised that we were taking that route. We've been struggling so hard with economically getting back on top of things. And here we are, right back to where we were in July and August. Now, the only difference this time is that it does appear to be last time it was more like, hey, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know where we are, and I don't know where we're going. But this time it does seem to think that they have it where it's fixed, and this might be the last time we do it, just to curtail. And I'll give you another opinion too. I really believe they're trying to curtail what happened over Thanksgiving. For once they were right. They knew that the get-togethers were going to cause it to spread a little bit, and it looks like they're right. It looks like it has. It looks like it's fueled that. It looks like those the travelers and some of the get-togethers is pushing that out a little bit more than we thought it was going to. And I think they're even being more so protective because they know that Christmas is going to do the same, if not more, especially for the people who felt comfortable that there were no issues at Thanksgiving. If they got past it, they'll do it again, hence having another issue. So it's just a once in a lifetime, a situation, and personally affecting me. I was really surprised, but certainly respect the fact that my dad, he pulled the plug. He didn't want to do Thanksgiving, and I know that was hard on him, but he's a pretty conservative dude, and he pretty much is. He's a very reasonable guy, and he doesn't like to subject to mass hysteria or anything. But even he's at the point where it's just not a good idea, so it's hard. It's hard to go through Thanksgiving where millions of Americans probably didn't see their family like they normally did. And I can tell you right now, that's the first time I can only recall 1 year that I was not with my father on Thanksgiving. Once. And that was only because I was on the East Coast. What's that, Brent?
Prison,
yeah. I'm not afraid to go back. Yeah, so that was the good one. That was the one time, so it's difficult. It's hard, and again, a lot of people think when we open up the show, we talk about COVID and everybody's like, blah, blah, blah. It's just babbling. It's not babbling. It affects us. This affects us. It affects us in everything. Every week is different. And it's been a roller coaster ride because we go from highs to lows. And right now, I think we're experiencing our greatest form of positivity in the fact that we think we can, fix this to some extent. But it's like we still have to go through the pain to get there. I think the forecast now, 250,000 that will be affected or that will die from it. Probably going to be more, is my guess.
And it doesn't discriminate. I mean,
it does not discriminate.
No age, no race, age, nothing. It attacks everybody.
It knows nothing. It doesn't care. It's amazing how something 1/1000th of the size can affect us like that. Yeah. And it's very potent what it can do. And you're right. Yeah. It is blind towards it. And whereas I've been more nonchalant about, I know it can happen. Like I said, this past week was the first time I acknowledged, and Dina will tell you too, is the first time I acknowledged, hey, it's out there. I go, we know way too many people that have it right now. They know where they caught it from. They know why they caught it. And it's tough. I will give a caveat to some of the folks that we know that have it. It was because they were inside a car with somebody, sharing food, or being at a public a place that had more people than it should, like a gym or something. So each of the people that we said have it did fall into the category that they would have said you should have eliminated that. But then we'd all be in the same boat. All of us have done something. Hell, I believe everybody that's gone to the store is just as subjective as anybody. Mm-hmm. That's been my problem at the beginning, from why we're shutting down. I mean, if you go to the store is the store and everybody goes to it. So what are we stopping if we're all going to the store? I mean, it's a daily thing, or at least a weekly thing for everybody, daily people that are in there. If we're going to be there, what good does it do to stop the other things? And I get the bars and stuff. I'm not saying that you should be at a bar right next to somebody, but shutting down a restaurant that's already on their knees, that already wouldn't be fully capacitated anyways, that just doesn't make sense to me. I guess you could argue the hypocritical side of that as well. They wouldn't have had that many people anyway, so what does it matter? I'm like, yeah, but sometimes they do. And the times that they do, they should be able to organize to where they can fit as many people as possible and still abide by the 6-foot rule and still open business up, because that would matter. That was another fault, I thought, that 50%, 75%. I'm like, that doesn't work. I go, let those guys do that one-on-one as they go through. You know, I don't think there's any owner that's going to try to push the COVID rules knowing what's out there, knowing it takes one person to take a picture. Oh. And, you know, the next thing you know, now you're on the news and you're in a lot of trouble. So there were ways around it, but it doesn't matter. We're not the ones in charge. We like to vote people who are in charge. That doesn't work. It doesn't matter. We're not the ones who are in charge of that. All we can do is live it and get past it. And our hope is we do get past it. We obviously have a new way of life, not so much just because of COVID, but because it's changed corporate businesses as to how they're going to work, which all trickles down to us and how people buy houses and what their lives look like for the next 5 to 10 years. The silver lining in COVID is that it has produced a new way of communicating, a new way of living. And on the downside, it will force businesses that have over-hired and run themselves inefficiently for the last God knows how many years. Maybe it's taught them a little bit of a lesson. Unfortunately, that'll hurt the American people more than anything, well, and the world population too, for that matter, because it will take jobs away from people that were making money. But then you get to should they have been making that money anyways? So it's a catch-22.
And not to bash large corporations, because
you can bash them. I don't care. You can bash them.
And there are good ones out there, but the backbone of this country has always been small businesses, and unfortunately, they're the ones that are being shut down. Yeah. You don't hear of McDonald's shutting down. Yeah. It's the local bakery and the Italian restaurant that's been in the family for 50 years that's shutting down.
Yeah, and I will bash corporations, because that's part of the way I got into real estate, and that's part of the way the show is based upon, is the greed of the corporations and not caring about the common person.
I agree with you.
And don't get me wrong, I've got a lot of really good friends, some of our best friends that work for massive corporations. They are at the top of those corporations, and most of them, I will say most of them, because some of them probably have some fault there, but most of them are not the issue. But there are some that are, because they embed that, hey, look, it doesn't matter, I'll be fine no matter what. But the rest of these people, the ones that actually make it work and the ones that actually need the money, are the ones that are expendable. And then the one who screws it all up gets to parachute out with $10 to $20 million or more and be taken care of the rest of their life. And I don't understand that. That part has always been a struggle to me. I have never understood how we ever got to a point where we rewarded someone for massively failing, and then everybody else gets punished for that. Now, if y'all detect a big chip on my shoulder, that's how I got here. That's how I got here, because I was that one that was doing well, working on an executive team, and had the whole world at my shoulders and then on my fingers. And then someone just said, we suck, so we're just going to pull that out and we'll walk away with money. But you, my friend, you will start over. Mm-hmm. And I didn't like that. And that's how I got into real estate. And those of you think this is babbling too, it's not. This is the actual heart and soul of SWR and the heart and soul of this show is that we believe there are different alternatives as to how you can have multiple income streams and a career that you control and that nobody else controls. And you're the one that makes the decisions. You're the one who judges what your work hours need to be. And you don't have someone else that you're depending on to screw this whole thing up. So I love how David said that, because he's very polite, and his intent's true. It's not what his emphasis was, is that it is the small business that runs this country. And right now, those people are not getting the attention they need. You could argue that the government went out of their way with the PPP programs and the EIDL programs, but now the studies are coming out, and it's no freaking surprise that a lot of that money went to massive corporations, and they've just run through it.
And they didn't need it. Really, they didn't need it like a small business needed it.
They
stock
didn't
buybacks,
need it.
baby.
What's that, Brent?
They're all just going to do stock buybacks anyways and get bailed out again. So it doesn't.
Yeah.
Well, and then the sad, and in addition to that, unfortunately, like we just went through this major election, these politicians, a lot of them are in bed with these big corporations because they give them massive donations over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And it just makes matters worse. Now, again, I'm with you, Robert. I came from corporate America too, and I got burned pretty bad. And so, I know there are good and bad out there, but let me tell you, it's killing the small business owner.
And let me tell you guys that there's a lot of people that are on our team. We run what's considered to be one of the largest teams in the Keller Williams organization. And one, I'm proud of that. But two, I'm more proud of what David just said. A majority of my agents are people just like me, that they did work other jobs and they got thrown out or done wrong, or they just wanted something new, but they didn't want to have to do it full time. And of course, David's full time, but that he got that way. He has the option to do other things. And that's an important piece of what we do, not only for the show, but for everybody else that watches. If you're watching, you're from another firm and, you struggle with that. This is something that we embrace. If you have friends, especially anybody who's watching, that you have friends that are looking for something new and they need help and they need a new career, or they're tired of what's happening at corporate. Look what Brent has down there at the bottom, joinswr.com. That is a great site to go to. It gives you real good snapshots as to what it is that we do and what it is that we support. And you won't find it anywhere else in the country where someone else has that type of setup. So check that out at joinswr.com. Not so much for anybody that's watching, but for actually your friends and contacts that have been looking for something like this, because I'm one of the only ones that cater to it out there. Okay, so look, 18 minutes into a show that's supposed to be about possession, and I got no problem with that, because that front end section was really important. It is important because it discussed two big issues to us. One, the COVID pandemic that's affecting all of us, but two, it also talks about the discretion of what we believe real estate is to us and why we think people should do it. So I got no problem cutting into the topic, because our show is ongoing all the time. It doesn't matter. Even if we cut short a particular topic, it just continues the next time around. So with that said, let's talk about possession for a little while. Always got my buddies with me. I got Mr. David Tanner on my side over here.
Hey.
Very good agent out of the Coppell area. He'll serve anywhere in Dallas, Fort Worth. But not only is he a very competent agent, he becomes a very good friend of mine. I think it's the greatest part about running a brokerage is the friendships that I have created and not created, that I've been a part of over the last 20 years. And that's something that's more meaningful to me than anything. So David certainly is one of those people. Always love to have him on. Then I got my buddy down there, Brent Holberg. He's on the show quite a bit, probably because I force him to be. He has to be on the show. It's part of his criteria in running the firm with me. So he doesn't have as good of an excuse. But honestly, even if I didn't make him, he'd probably do it anyways, because he was doing it already before I made him. So always happy to have him on the show. I do love his subtitle today. As much as he likes to joke around, he knows that joinswr.com is very popular to us. We actually do webinars on a bi-weekly to every other 3-week basis to where we talk about what it is we do. So you can also get on there to get that information as well. Okay, so when we talk about possession is probably one of the more difficult concepts we discuss on the show. it's not, it's difficult because of two things. One, it's not something you read in the book. Okay. There's no rules that you follow. It's not just, this or that. It's situational based. And then two, it affects, it becomes personal. Okay. And when you put those two things together, it's really, really bad news. So we do this show once every 6 to 8 months. And I think it's been about 8 months since we've done it. So I thought it was a good time to bring it back. We constantly have a flow of new people that watch the show, new agents. Now, this show today is good for everyone. Everyone out there. If you're a new agent, if you've been around for a long time, if you're a client, if you have a client that you're having trouble with this right now, trust me when I say this is a very good show for them to watch. And actually, I don't have a problem with you today saying, hey, look, you can just kind of come in at the 20-minute mark, because that's when they start doing the topic. In fact, when I post the show today, that's exactly what I'm going to say. I'm going to say, look, the opening was a little bit long today. The topic really started 20 minutes into it. So, but you should really tell someone that is in that category, they should watch the show, because this is going to be very helpful for the things that we're going to touch on here. So
I appreciate the Warner changing our names on his own, so that's nice.
Did Brendan Warner do that? Oh, guys, it's great. We've become, we talk about real estate and friendships. The owner and the producer of the studio that we're in, he's become a very dear friend of ours. We met him, it's almost been 2.5, 3 years now. And he, again, is living proof of how great real estate can be. If Mark lived right down the road with me, I assure you he'd be on the back patio a lot more often than the average person, just because he's become so close to us. And we do consider him almost like family as far as I'm concerned. I'd do anything for him, and I'm pretty certain he would do that for me. Plus, he thinks I'm totally cool, so that's awesome as well. I don't get that very often. My kids certainly don't think so either. So when we go through and we are doing the possession, here's the most difficult part about the possession. It's timing based. Okay, it's a sensitive time base, because it's talking about when someone is going to move all their stuff in. And when we move our stuff in, David, what are some of the things we have to do when we're moving in? What are some of the things we have to set up or get ready for or be prepared for?
Well, that's a good point. Like you said, it's the timing is key, all right? Because both you choose the closing date, right? And it's in the contract, and you're all moving towards that date. The seller's got to be out. They've got to get to their new place. The buyer's probably selling another property, and they're going to try to get into the new one as quickly as they can. So you've got things like moving companies. You've got utilities to think about. You've got the school transfer for kids. There's a multitude of things that we as realtors, while we're not in charge of those, it's kind of incumbent upon us to help keep people, remind them of that throughout the entire process.
Because we manage the process. We're the managers.
We manage
the process. Yeah, so that's an excellent explanation. Now, Brent, follow up with the biggest issue. He laid it out pretty good. He got everything in there that we're concerned about. Now, if all those events are happening, what is the major issue that we are looking at since all those events are out there?
Well, if we miss close, then we got a big problem.
That's right. Because all of those events that David just mentioned are now delayed. They're now delayed. Yes. And that does not make people happy. In fact, it makes them just downright have anxiety. And this country doesn't need any more anxiety. It already has an anxiety problem. And they don't need that added on to it. And if you think that's just a side comment, I'm being dead serious. That is what drives this problem more than anything, is the anxiety that it creates. Because there's so many important things. Listen to what David said. He mentioned just the school alone. Getting the kids in school. I mean, that's already a stressful time for him as is. Now we're worried about whether we're on time, whether we got their address closed. This becomes important too when you close on a property, especially before the school year. You have to close in a certain amount of time to be able to register for that school. A lot of school districts won't let you join until they have the address of where you've closed at. And if you don't do that, you could have issues. It's not everywhere, but it's a constant problem. It's one thing after the next. Now, go ahead, David, please.
Well, and I was going to say too, you get back to the real estate nuts and bolts of it. I'm sure we've all dealt with agents in the past, and none of us are perfect. No. I get that, but how many times have you, except for Brent, how many times have you gotten ready? You're headed to closing, you've got it set, and then maybe that buyer's agent didn't do the walkthrough the day before, and then they do it the day of, and then bam, they call you that afternoon, and hey, the HVAC's not working, or something major. I'm like, really? You could have told us that a couple of days ago.
Yeah,
but you waited till the 11th hour, and boy, you talk about having some upset clients on both sides.
Well, that's 1 out of 100 we're going to keep talking about, because there's one.
Yeah.
There's one right there. Go do a walkthrough. And so takeaway number 1, start doing a walkthrough, and they find out that for some reason the AC is not working. And maybe and if you think it's ironic or rare that the air condition goes out the day before or the day of close, welcome to Texas. It happens all the time.
Yeah.
It does happen.
It does happen.
Now we've got, and this is a good one that David picked, because now you get into real contract law. So this is a really good discussion for anybody that's been in this or is involved in it right now. It would be the heater right now. What happens there is we have a contractual date to close, and it's today. But the buyer, common sense driven, says, well, wait a minute, I'm not closing until that air condition is fixed. Now, you would think that the buyer is absolutely correct and that that's what should happen because it's not their responsibility. But the contract doesn't read like that. The contract reads you're supposed to close on X date. It didn't say, well, if this happens or if that doesn't happen.
That's right.
So from a common sense point, this is a really good takeaway, by the way, especially if you're a veteran agent too, and you never come across this, because I've taught this particular subject quite a bit. This one right here, you still have to close. Okay. There are some veteran agents and brokers that will argue that what I'm saying is not true, because there's a part of the contract that says that the property is as is. And they would argue that as is was the air condition was working. But there are some courts that would say, yeah, and we agree that the seller is on the hook for it, but we don't agree that you have the right to wait on them. You need to close, and then that seller needs to fix it as soon as they can because they're still on the hook. So if you get to where you say, as the buyer agent, we're not closing, you're the one who's encouraging breach. Now listen to me too, especially if you're a new agent. That's where you can get your ass in a lot of trouble. You start acting like you're doing something right, and you're like, well, my buyer's not closing. I love that. My buyer's not closing. I'm like, better check with an attorney before you go ahead and make that stupid statement, because you don't know. You can make it from a common sense way of saying, well, we just can't close until it's fixed. That's not the right thing to do. The contract doesn't judge right or wrong. It just judges what's in the writing itself. And the writing itself says that that close has to happen on that date. So this is a terrible mistake. Well, I'm not going to just say a new agent. I'm going to say veteran agents. I'm going to say veteran agents more times than not. And I'm going to say the general public and themselves. You as a seller right now, if you're going through this and you're that seller, or I'm sorry, the buyer, if you're that buyer and your seller has an issue, this can go with roofing too in the spring. And you say, I'm not doing it till it's fixed. Better be careful. No one's saying that you're wrong. We know that the seller needs to fix it. But to suggest that you're going to hold off before they do it, might want to be careful on that one. That might not necessarily go your way. Those of you who like to quote the law, love it when someone says, well, that's against the law. I'm like, one, you're not an attorney, so you couldn't even say it even if you were right. You wouldn't know. And two, I say this on the show quite a bit from the legal system because I've been involved in it so much with watching others and dealing with problems over the 20 years. I always say this, and I mean it. Do you know why they call a judge a judge? Brent, David, have y'all heard it before? Do y'all know why they call them that?
I've heard it quite a few times.
Yeah, because they
judge.
Right.
They judge. That means they decide what they interpret the law to be. Which, by the way, that's why you have 7, is that right? Supreme Court justices, so that there
9.
is, and it is 9, thank you. And that's what, notice how I did not say I know it's 7. I couldn't remember. It's 9. See, I thank God Brent knew that. I'd have been more embarrassed if none of us knew it. That's why you have 9, so that you can have multiple opinions as to what they think the law should be. So don't ever tell someone that's against the law. You don't know. Unless you're an attorney, you don't know whether it's against the law. And even if you thought it was against the law, you should have said, I think it's against the law. That's a comment that a lot of people mess up on. When they want to quote something legal, they just say, well, you can't do that. It's against the law. Probably should say, I think it's against the law. You don't know.
Yeah. Well, and the good thing about it is, well, I say that I think it is. I think overall it's a good thing for the industry. All the contracts we use were written by attorneys, lawyers, right?
For the last 40 years.
Yeah, exactly. So we feel pretty confident in knowing what we're filling out when we're doing these contracts, that we're using very good creative wording and whatnot. And then the judge, if a judge does have to step in, well, that judge is also an attorney, right? So he's interpreting what other attorneys wrote. So you're right. They're judging that. It's not up to us to do that.
Yeah, we don't know. It's not a slam dunk, which is why you always try to avoid at all costs any type of legal conversation. Now, this is a center point of this show because possession all comes down to legalities and what the contract says. Because when we talk about possession, we are talking about the threat that someone's not able to possess the house when they were supposed to. So what is going to happen? Who is going to do what? All right. Now, this goes the other way, too. We're talking about the buyer and them threatening. Well, the seller can pull this stunt, too. And the seller most popularly likes to do this when the buyer's lender is delayed. And this is the primary part of this show and the discussion of this show is to understand what happens when a buyer's lender is delayed and they say they need to push the close off. Should go without saying that probably 99% of the sellers out there do not want to hear that the close is being delayed. Probably the number one reason is because they can't close on their house until theirs closes. So now they're delayed because of you, which that starts becoming personal because now it's your fault that you're causing inconvenience to them. So you have a lender that is running behind. This does happen. I'm not going to say it's often, but it happens. If I had to guesstimate, I would say anywhere between 25 to 35% of the transactions have some type of delay because of finance. Now, if you're in the general public and you like to smart off, you're like, well, that's ridiculous. That's because they're just incompetent. And that's normally the first thing that someone wants to say to a lender when they're off. And I'm one of them at times, depending on my mood. But if you want to, and their track record, if you really want to have some defense to them, they do have a lot of federal laws that they have to abide by. And the worst one is that stupid Frank Dodd who, God, that is the worst piece of legislation. And, I'm usually pretty neutral on the show. I'll argue with anybody if they ever want to talk about that dumb legislation. That legislation was set to correct the awfulness that happened in 2007 when the market crashed, when we were giving money to a dog or a cat because there was so much fraud going on. And there is no doubt all of us agreed that had to be fixed. But you take a problem that's bad and then you go the complete opposite end of the spectrum with no common sense, with no one who understands that industry, and creates a federal law that says these are the things that happen. Now, what I'm referring to for our particular conversation is where it requires a 3-day minimum that the buyer gets the disclosures, and those numbers have to be within X%, and it's not a big margin of what they were originally quoted. So one, if they don't get it within 3 days before the close is already going to be delayed. And two, if the numbers are off by the accepted margin, they have to redo them. Both cases cause for a delay. The delay is worse if it's a Thursday or a Friday, which is why we typically tell people do not close on Thursday and Friday if you can help it. That's a good takeaway too for a newer agent that you should not try to close on Thursday and Friday if you can help it. We can't help it sometimes. We have to close on Thursday. In fact, I've got a couple I think that are Thursday and Friday. But you better believe when I set these things, I try at all costs to avoid a Thursday or Friday close, because if it's missed, you don't just miss Thursday and Friday. Now you're going to miss probably Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah.
And that is not something that's going to go over very well for someone who filled up the global van truck, is moving from Pennsylvania. They have their whole family. They're moving into the white picket fence. They flew their family down from Pennsylvania because they're all going to help. So they have all this family. They're staying at the Best Western down the street, and they're all ready to load the house because they're only there for the weekend and they have flights in for the weekend. And now we're being told that it might not even be until Tuesday that this is going to happen. You don't have to be an expert in real estate to know that that's going to cause personal issues. You're going to have people that are upset. And when they get upset, they like to take it out on everybody. And we become that nice big target that they want to take it out on. I will say it's amazing in 20 years of practicing, I still wait for the one person that goes through this and comes to me and goes, hey man, I know this is none of your doing, so let's just get it right. I keep waiting for the one person, but that doesn't happen. Y'all, I have dear friends, that are so close to us that they have the keys to our house that do not follow that same pattern. That they literally, when it doesn't close, everything's thrown out. You want another takeaway, especially if you're a newer agent. Real estate shows the true ugliness in somebody. No matter how good of a friend they are to you, no matter how close they are to you, even if they're your mom or your dad, they can turn very personal on you when it comes to real estate. And it's very disappointing. I have few negatives in real estate, but you better believe this is one of them. One of the only things I dread is when it closes off and possession is going to be delayed, because I know that we are about to get into an ugly conversation. Even at its best, it's going to be uncomfortable. And I joke a lot in all the shows and all the teachings I've done over the years, and Brent's heard it so many times, and David probably has too, but I always make this joke when it comes to possession. 97% of a real estate agent's week or deals or day-to-day work, 97% of those are the greatest freaking days. It's a great job, which is why we encourage it so much. It's a great job. There's so much freedom to it. There's so much, a lot of potential money to be made. And it's better than any corporate job you'll ever find. I can say that too, because I've been around in corporate. I'm not just oblivion to corporate. But I'm going to tell you right now, that 3%, it's as bad as it freaking gets. I always say that if you smoke, you'll smoke more. And if you drink, you'll drink more. Because on those days, there is nothing that's going to go right. And when I say day, it might be days or weeks that this continues, depending on the delay. This is an awful time period.
Well, as an agent too, that's the best time I find to go out of town. Once go out of town, your phone doesn't work. Yeah.
And I'll tell you what. I'll tell you something else too. In my short 3 years that I've been in real estate, one of the things that I have noticed, it typically comes down to not an agent's competence or incompetence, but it's the communication. Because nobody else talks to every single player in the process except for us.
So look,
we talk to them.
I'm going to stop him right there because it's too good, and I don't want it. You talk about the takeaways of all takeaways. That honestly, that should have come from me before it came from him. But he's just smarter than I am. That is the absolute true statement. It has nothing to do with competence at this point. It has to do with the communication trail that's been happening, that should have been happening for the last 4 or 5 weeks. So in our group, I don't mind telling everybody, we make it a requirement. It's not really a requirement because we can't make somebody do something in an independent contractor job, but it's as close to a requirement as you're going to get. We tell our guys that they have to, every Monday, they're supposed to be contacting every vendor that's involved. Title company, lender, other agent, their client. And they should be asking every week, is there anything that you're waiting on from me?
Yep.
Now, the reason why that's important is when we get to this miraculous close date and that lender is starting to feel the heat, that they know that people are upset. They know that people are getting angry about this. They start spewing off excuses. They start saying excuses. And a lot of times they like to say the excuses on the client because they don't want to take accountability for it. So they say, well, we asked the client for this sheet and it wasn't filled out and now we need it. I'm like, that's BS. That's not a today thing. That was a 3-week thing.
Yeah.
And I've talked to you 5 times since then where I asked you specifically, is there anything you're waiting on? And you said no. In fact, you said we're great. We're on time. The reason why you have those calls is when it does go downhill like that, the first thing you say is no. That's not what happened. You guys are wrong, and you need to do whatever it takes to make it right at this point in time. Whatever, and I always tell everybody, whatever favor you need to use, whatever supervisor you need to talk to, you need to get on, because I am not like the other real estate agents. I didn't, and at least I'm speaking for my group more than anything. And when I speak for my group, I'm speaking for them too, because they're told to say the same thing because they usually come through me to have this conversation. I tell them, we are different. We had the conversations in place. We didn't just sit there with our thumbs up waiting. We're not surprised by this. We've told them. We've verified with everybody. Something was missed. There was a competence error on their end, a follow-through error on their end. And it is what it is. Now we're at that point. But they better hurry up and do what they need to do. I'm always famous for when I talk to someone, and when it comes, this doesn't come just from real estate. This comes with anything. You ask Dina, when one of the best things that I do is handle confrontation or dealing with someone who hasn't done what they're supposed to do. Dina won't give me much credit, but she will tell you that I'm as good as they get when it comes to making someone answer for what they should have. And that comes in this attitude that when I get something like this, when I pick up the phone and call them, I don't want to talk to them. I don't want to talk to their supervisor. I'm not even sure I want to talk to the supervisor over the supervisor. I want to talk to the person who's 4 or 5 people over the person I've been talking to, because I want to know for a fact that all those people are aware that this happened, because 9 times out of 10, if you keep talking and you keep yelling at the one person, that was the person that caused this in the first place. And it also probably means that the people that could have corrected it don't know about it. And this goes for business in general. When you need something done right, you don't just sit there and talk to the person that probably caused the issue. You go over them until you're confident that you're dealing with the person that can make something happen. And if you talk to them right, you'll know who that person is.
Well, now, to be fair, every time you forget to text me back, I call Gary Keller.
he won't respond.
No.
But it's funny. You can take this as an arrogant comment, which nothing ever comes from me as arrogant. No, but never mistake my arrogance. Is there's no such thing. It's confidence that I have. I have a lot of confidence in what I do. And when he says something like that, you better believe it's because I know he never has to do that, because I make damn sure that I do what I'm supposed to do. There are very few people in this world that would say Robert didn't do what he was supposed to do, or he's off on it. People say a lot of ugly things about me, but that is not one of them. And the reason why that's important, it's because of this topic that we're talking about. This has to be the mentality you have when you're dealing with this issue. We talk a lot about on the show about how you have to be personal and outgoing, and we want the type of agent that has that, but we also want the agent that can say, I've had enough. Mm-hmm. All right. So look, I'll give credit to both of these guys. I'm going to talk more about Brent because I've been with him longer, but David is up and coming with this too. And he has these traits, which is also why he's on the show, because he has these traits. Brent's very good at being a really super personal guy, probably too personal, probably annoying to some extent. but really good outgoing guy. But he is very good at when it comes to there being a problem. He is very direct. I actually think Brent is better than me in the confrontation because Brent tends to hold his anger back. He's not near as hot-headed as I can be. And I'm very big about not yelling at somebody, but hot-headedness doesn't have to be just yelling.
That's right.
Hot-headedness can be getting very ugly with someone in a very direct way. I'm probably a lot worse with that. Brent is better than me, but he's very direct. He knows that I'm tired of being the good guy. I'm tired of this being happy. We've got a problem, and I need it fixed. And that's the type of mentality. David has it too. David actually, in his shorter career, has had these issues where he has had to say, look, I'm a nice guy. And David is a nice guy, but I'm tired of this. Mm-hmm. This mentality has to be available when we're dealing with possession. Those of you who think this is a babbling run-on, you are not paying attention. When we go on tantrums like this, we are talking about the mentality you have to deal with this type of situation. We are teaching you what's not in a book. We're teaching you live experience, live what has to happen, the mindset, the attitude that has to happen to get this fixed. Because if you don't have that, this problem that we've been talking about, getting back to this 3% and all this other horribleness, it's about to go right back in your face. Okay?
Well, and to use a sports analogy, I mean, I grew up playing sports and specifically baseball, and my coaches always told us, they said, you know what, you can have the fastest fastball, you can have the best curveball, but if you don't have the fundamentals down, you will not win the game.
That's right.
And I think that's true. I think that's true in life in general. If you don't have the fundamentals down, none of your fancy, marketing campaigns are going to make a big difference. Yeah, you may get more clients, but you're going to piss a lot of people off in the process.
I talk a lot on the show about there are people who are street smart, and there are people who are book smart. I would always rather be street smart more than anything. Yeah. I would always rather know the common sense level, what's going on, because to me, those are the most level-headed people. Those are the people who are going to get something done.
Well, because look at most of the problems, and you two guys specifically, you've been in it for 10 years or more. Look at most of the problems that you've encountered. A lot of it was the fundamental stuff that somebody just flat overlooked, or they didn't communicate. Carelessness, right?
Well, the funny thing is when you talk about carelessness, one person we don't have to worry about carelessness is our sponsor.
That's right. Very good. Brent is an awesome part of the show, and that is why we have him on here, because he keeps us on track. Hey, Brent, do me a favor. Go ahead and do both the sponsors today for me, okay?
Great. If I had Martin Cooley's phone number and everything, but maybe Mr. Mark.
Oh, he will. He's going to get there. He's playing like Tetris or something, but he usually catches up, and he's usually in the back end over there, and he hears something like, "Oh yeah."
Before I give all his information, we have two sponsors today. Number one is our Mr. Martin Cooley. He is our go-to guy for inspections. We give our clients always a choice of who they can use. And I see that number down there. Hopefully I can catch it as it crawls across the screen one more time. Martin's really good because he's with BPG Inspections, who's a Fidelity company, and they supply us with, or he does for sure, with great inspection reports that are done in a timely manner. They show up the same day, and they're color-coded with bullet points on what we need to really worry about. His license number is 5595. You can reach him at 817-401-3240. You can reserve his time at bpginspections.com. Great guy, somebody we've used for years and we really, really trust.
Yep.
So that's Martin Cooley. Our second sponsor is the guy that is responsible for my good looks, my father, Mr. Greg Goldberg. He is with Liberator.
Hey, your mom might be upset by that.
Well, she's not one of our sponsors. If she paid,
very good. I'm sorry. You're right. Continue.
So he is with Liberator Health Insurance, and they have plans that allow you to see any doctor and go to any hospital in or out of network. You can save 40 to 60% on your premiums. Liberator just insured a single mom with 2 kids with great benefits for under $330 per month. Those plans offer the largest PPO provider network in the United States that covers hospitalizations and surgeries, doctor visits, preventative health screenings, teledoc, x-rays, MRIs, labs, emergency rooms, and urgent care, and much more. As an independent broker agency, Liberator works with some of the best insurance carriers in the industry to get you the most coverage at an affordable monthly premium. For more information to get a free quick quote, call or text Greg Holdberg, independent health insurance broker, at 214-886-4688, or visit them at liberatorhealthinsurance.com.
Awesome. And I'll tag right on too with the self-plug, because it's our show and we are going to self-plug. Anybody who's always interested in doing real estate, whether it's full or especially part-time, you really should give us a shout. We have had our website down there for a long time today, but it's joinswr.com. Really simple. Joinswr.com. You're not going to find anybody that's going to cater to any type of dual career better than what we do. We have systems in place that not only get you the training you need when you have another job, but we actually support you when you need it the most, when your other job is calling you. We don't have a problem. We believe that anybody can do real estate just as effectively as anybody else, depending on how they utilize their time. So definitely reach out there. My email is always super easy. You can catch me at smokerbroker@kw.com. Again, that's smokerbroker@kw.com. Or you can always call me at 214-683-8973. Again, that's 214-683-8973. All right, a couple things as we wrap up. We are obviously going to do this. We're going to keep going next week and do the same. We're going to continue the show, because I will say we didn't talk as much about possession as I wanted to, but I still like the show because it hit on some of the most difficult pieces of possession. And what we're going to do next week is we're going to go back and expand to it. We're going to do scenario based of everything that we talked about today, so you can actually live through what happens and what should be done at each of those steps. We talked about the main one, which is the biggest problem, is when we have issues with the close date being pushed by the lender. There are a lot of other things that can go wrong, and we're going to discuss those actual things and what the responses to those are. But still a very good show from a concept level today on all those things that we're discussing. I want to thank everybody for always watching. I love the views that we get. I love the archive views. Again, too, if you're ever interested in sponsoring the show, give us a shout. Our sponsors get a lot of attention from the 130 agents that we have, and being one of the largest teams in the Keller Williams organization, it's very minimal to advertise with us, and we push those names to our crew all the time. So I'd almost want to argue that it's kind of foolish if you're not advertising when we have the resources that we have. So anybody you know that would be interested in that definitely is affected by the real estate world, they should give us a shout. We don't talk near enough about that, and we're changing that. We are starting to tell people, you really should probably advertise on the show. We have a lot of people that watch via archive. We have a lot of new agents that watch us, a lot of broker, a lot of team leads, a lot of managers watch our show, and we hear that all the time. We're very thankful for that. So this is a good show too, especially this episode. If you're having a client that you're having issues with on this particular topic, this is going to say, y'all really ought to watch this. I've been trying to tell you this, but I don't know a better way. Maybe you should listen to these guys, and maybe it will help out. You'd be surprised how often we hear that from our client base, that it actually, our agents, that it actually helped them in having somebody watch the show. Y'all, once again, happy holidays to you. We're going to be at Christmas for you. You know what? We're going to be in the new year, and I think all of us will just be probably the greatest ever in any lifetime, that this is the first year that we wish was just gone and we can start over. So we're almost there. Things are looking up. I know there's still some terrible things that are going on, but it is looking up. Life goes on. Again, thanks for watching. We're going to have a couple of shows here before the end of the year, and then we'll take a break and we'll get right back into it and start the new year off. Take care. Thanks again. We'll see you guys soon.
Bye, everybody.
See ya.